Hello, my name is Berlin, and I'm going to be teaching you how to IGL your games in Valorant. To give some context, I'm a collegiate Valorant player, and I IGL the state championship team, receiving training from a tier 2 analyst and multiple Radiant players. So, why do you need to IGL? In my humble opinion, I think IGLing is a very important skill, and I think it can really carry your game in competitive and a team setting and pretty much anywhere, honestly. I think it's a really important skill that isn't really talked about as much as other things like aim and crosshair placement. And I think specifically in competitive Valorant, if you're a skilled IGL, you can carry a team without having to be the best mechanical player, if that makes sense. And so I just want to give my thought process about how to IGL in a competitive setting, in a team setting, whatever. So to start with, let's talk about competitive Valorant. So in competitive, you're thrown in with 4 random teammates. You might be duo queued, you might be trio queued, who knows? But in competitive, you're not going to have a structured team. You're not going to have people that understand how to play the game maybe as much as you do, or understand how to play off you, or whatever. So what I'm going to be telling you is how to work around that and how to still properly IGL with, these circumstances. And to start with, I think you really need to understand like the main point of IGLing. I think, in my opinion, IGLing is just about putting your team in the right place and keeping everyone not only mentally like prepared, but strategically too. I think map control is a huge thing that a lot of people don't really understand, especially lower ranks. But overall, I think keeping the team mentally and strategically down to a T is kind of the whole goal, And so let's start with like the mental side of things. I think mentally, as an IGL, and you don't even have to be like shot calling. You can kind of just do this with whatever game you're in. You can be like a mental IGL per se, but I think really just keeping everyone like calm, knowing what you can and can't control. If someone's tilting, like just kind of calming everyone down. If someone's doing bad, you're not like trash talking them, stuff like that, and like kind of just keeping the spirits high. Maybe cracking some jokes here and there. If they're not landing, whatever, bro. You don't need to like try to force it, but like just really keeping the team mentally just on the same page, and like tension isn't rising and stuff, keeping people loose. You don't want to be like that annoying guy that's just like complimenting every little thing, but also just don't like, if someone's doing bad, like trash talking them is not going to make them play better. Having someone who's like raising the spirits a little bit and at least trying, that's going to make them play better. And I think that automatically will like increase your chances to win the game by like 5% if you're like just trying to implement this every game. I don't think there's like a set strategy with like how to like keep the spirits super high, but I think you can kind of find your own way of doing that, whether that be making jokes or whatever. Like I said, like everyone kind of has their own way of doing that, but I would suggest experimenting and trying to implement that for sure. And on the strategic side of things, I'm gonna break this down into like 2 sections. So you have like a lower rank IGL, which is like, I would say from iron to around like plat or diamond. I think this is like to IGL those ranks, I think you need to keep things a lot more simple. For example, I think just everyone doing one thing is like way better than trying to overcomplicate it. And I think most players in that rank zone they're not going to understand map control. They're not going to understand inserting someone. They're not going to understand conditioning or any of that, So I think if you're really trying to IGL those ranks, I would say like keep it really simple. Try to just like, if you notice that like a site's particularly weak, if they're like the Cypher has like a really bad setup, or something like that, like just try to hit that site, make pretty basic reads and just like keep everyone be like, hey, let's go A site, guys. And I think that automatically just like puts everyone in the same boat. Everyone knows what they're doing, and like that's just gonna make you automatically again raise your odds by like 5-10% if you're doing stuff like that. And I think everyone should know how to default at least. even in lower ranks, I think a lot of people think defaulting is super complicated. A default, there's not like a set default for every map, but like typically, like if there's a big mid and like a cent or something, like a 1-3-1 would be a default, and you're just like kind of holding and just trying to work the map. I think just setting up like a team position where you're spread around the map, you know, and like trying to just make sure you're just getting information that like, to me, that's like what a default is. It's you're just getting information and like playing reactive off of it. My best example would be on Lotus. Like a really easy default would just be like a 3 people go C, one person goes B, and 1 person sitting outside of A listening. And if you hear something on A as like the sentinel, usually you tell your team, you're like, hey, there's pushing A, let's go C, you know. And then it's like you're just playing reactive. That's not that complicated to me. I think a lot of people like think of a default as this super complicated concept, you know. And I think even in lower ranks you can just implement something like that. And like if you are IGLing, just be like, all right guys, let's just, you know, spread across the map, just get information, and then make a mid round. Like that's really not that difficult, and I think you guys can implement that pretty easily. So now we have like the more higher ranks. I'd say this is like Diamond to Ascendant to Radiant, you know. And coaching, I mean IGLing, these ranks gets a little more complicated. I think to really be like a good IGL strategically, you really have to work the map, and it does like depend on the map. But for example, I think most maps with a big mid, you really want to like put an emphasis on trying to control the mid space and controlling the extremities, making sure that your #1 priority is map control. And I think you can start to incorporate more complicated things like conditioning, which is conditioning includes, you know, like getting in the enemy's head by doing something like over and over and it's working, and then you switch it up and catch them off guard because they expect you to do the thing that you've been doing over and over. For example, like you hit A 3 times in a row, but then on the round you're like, hey, I think they're going to change it up this round. They're going to like adapt to that. Like if you're in like a Ascendant Immortal lobby, they're going to change and adapt to that. So what you say is, hey, Cypher, we're going to push A, and then we're going to insert you into this main, and then we're going to leave and go to the opposite site, and we're like going to pull a lot of rotates because we've conditioned that, hey, we're like going A a lot, you know. And I think that is a really, really strong concept that it is a little complicated to implement, but I think if you're in the higher ranks, people will understand what you're trying to get at, and that is a very, very good strategy, you know. Like it's very powerful. And I think inserting, I already kind of touched on that, but just like getting someone inserted in a good position, you know. And if your sentinel isn't lurking that much, you know, then like get them in a good spot, you know, and try to like insert them into a main, have them get information for you, and then everything just kind of happens, and it's a lot more easier for you and the whole team, you know. And it really does depend, to be honest, and I don't really want to like overcomplicate this because I think making it simple is like the best. But like if your team isn't pushing, you know, then just or your team's being really stubborn and they're not listening to you, you know, then just get them together and just 5-hit something, or just do a simple split. You know, you don't have to make a crazy read, you don't have to be FNS, you know, you really don't have to insert or condition at all. I think that's just when you start getting the hang of things. But honestly, the biggest thing to like actually getting better at IGLing is just trying things. Like every IGL is different. Like in my experience, there's some IGLs at the collegiate level that just like are very like kind of takes a back seat and everyone just IGLs on the team, you know. And that can be a good strategy depending on team to team, you know. And competitive, you're just going to be given 4 random teams, so you really don't know, you know. Sometimes like having a dominant IGL works, and I think for you guys, just like trying stuff out and figuring out like what works for you is really important. And I think, you know, team by team, being able to adapt and like find out like what style I should go for. If no one's listening, you know, then just try to keep it simple. Or like if they're not listening at all, then just don't IGL, you know. Like sometimes it doesn't work. But I think at the end of the day, just keeping things simple and pretty basic, and just like trying new things, you know, and learning. Like if you try to IGL and like you just fail a lot at first, like don't get discouraged. Like use that as like a learning experience, you know. Like like it takes a little bit to actually become like a competent IGL. You know, it's not just like overnight you just flip a switch. But I think my whole point of this video is that I think IGLing can be really good, and it can increase your odds of winning by like 10-15% like every single game if you're consistently trying to take that initiative and trying to IGL. And for me, I can like attest to this because I'm like around Immortal 2 right now. You know, I'm almost at Immortal 3. I'm like consistently pretty good. I don't have that much hours in the game, and my mechanics really aren't like the best in the world, but I just try to IGL every game, and I can notice that like I will literally just win a round just because of my IGLing, you know. And I think it's a really it's a really valuable skill that not a lot of people touch on, you know. And I think you know, just the whole point of this video is just to like open some eyes, you know, and like potentially put some more people into that role, because I think a lot of people do have the potential to be a good IGL. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for watching.